April 27, 1973. A shielded room inside the American Society for Psychical Research in New York. A man named Ingo Swann sat down, closed his eyes, and began describing a planet he had never visited. Swann was not an astronomer. He was a painter, a conceptual artist, a man who had spent years insisting that human perception had edges no one had properly mapped. By 1973, he had already submitted himself to dozens of controlled experiments at research institutions. He had reported things that were not supposed to be reportable. But the session on April 27 was different. Given only a set of astronomical coordinates, he began describing Jupiter, its storms, its bands of color, the particular texture of its upper atmosphere. Then he said something that stopped the room. He described a ring around the planet. Not a thick one, a thin, faint structure that he said he almost missed. The scientists present noted it down and moved on. At that point, no one had detected rings around Jupiter. No telescope had found them. No theoretical model had predicted them with any confidence. Pioneer 10 completed its flyby of Jupiter in December 1973. Its instruments confirmed the presence of a ring structure. The session transcript had been sitting in a file for 9 months. That file existed because someone with institutional resources had decided to take Swann seriously. His work at the American Society for Psychical Research had attracted attention well beyond academic parapsychology. The attention came from people who did not publish their interest in journals. The other side of this story begins in Menlo Park, California. Stanford Research Institute, known as SRI International, was a defense contractor with deep ties to the intelligence community. In 1972, it began hosting a small and formally deniable research program. The program studied whether human perception could be extended across distance without any known physical mechanism. The Defense Intelligence Agency was funding it. The question they were paying to answer was a practical one. If the Soviet Union was investing in psychic espionage, could the United States afford not to? By 1978, the program had a name: Stargate. It operated quietly, accumulating data, refining protocols, and cycling through personnel. Physicist Edwin May eventually took over its direction. Over his tenure, May oversaw more than 26,000 separate remote viewing trials conducted between 1972 and 1995. The budget across the program's lifespan exceeded $20 million. That figure did not come from enthusiasts funding a curiosity. It came from people who allocate money based on threat assessments. The viewers themselves were military personnel, trained to sit in controlled environments and describe locations, objects, or events using only a set of coordinates. They were told nothing about the target. They produced transcripts. Some of those transcripts were operationally specific enough that intelligence analysts studied them. Some matched. Some did not. The program continued anyway, which tells you something about what the people reviewing it believed they were seeing. The two threads converge in 1995. The Cold War had ended. The institutional justification for Stargate was weakening. The CIA commissioned an independent review conducted by the American Institutes for Research. The AIR evaluated 2 decades of data. Their conclusion was careful and is worth stating precisely. Remote viewing did produce results that were statistically anomalous. Above chance. The effect was measurable. It was real in the sense that it appeared in the numbers. They terminated the program anyway. The reason was this: viewers could not reliably identify which parts of their sessions were accurate. A transcript might contain several correct details embedded among incorrect ones. Without a way to isolate the signal from the noise before the session was tested against ground truth, the data was operationally unusable. You cannot act on information if you cannot know which piece of it to trust. What remained was a specific and uncomfortable shape. Not a confirmation that remote viewing worked. Not a debunking. Something worse than either. The air had found an anomalous signal they could not explain. They had also found that the signal could not be used. The program was closed. The transcripts were archived. Edwin May continued his research independently. The 26,000 trials remained on file. The Jupiter session transcript remained on file too. Dated April 27, 1973. The ring description noted by the observers in the room. The Pioneer 10 confirmation dated December 1973. There are several ways to hold these facts. The most comfortable is coincidence. Swann was producing large amounts of descriptive material. Some of it would inevitably intersect with later discovery. The detail about the ring is striking, but striking is not the same as impossible by chance. The scientific consensus on remote viewing is clear. No proposed mechanism exists. No replication has satisfied the standards required for established phenomena. And the history of parapsychology research is thick with artifacts produced by methodological error. The less comfortable position requires only that you sit with the data without resolving it. A program funded by a national intelligence agency at a cost exceeding $20 million over 23 years. An independent evaluation that found statistically anomalous results and then recommended termination because the results were real but unusable. 26,000 trials producing a signal no one could explain and no one could fully harness. A transcript describing a ring around Jupiter, written in April, filed away, confirmed in December. The program was closed because the information could not be trusted. Not because it was absent. The ring description exists in the archive. The date exists. The Pioneer 10 confirmation exists. What does not exist is an agreed-upon account of how a man in a shielded room in New York, given only a set of coordinates, described a structure around Jupiter that no instrument on Earth had yet detected. No one has offered one. Not in 1973. Not in 1995. Not since. The question that will not leave you is not whether Ingo Swann was right. The question is what it would mean if he was, and who decided in the end that knowing was not enough.